This is Bone Chillers to disturb your dreams. Dare to join us? Click subscribe, ring the bell. But remember, we cannot guarantee your safety from the nightmares that await. Prepare to be thrilled, chilled, and filled with a sense of dread you'll find nowhere else. Welcome to the darkness. We've been waiting.
Paranormal Prankster. When I started my YouTube channel, Prankster's Paradise, it was all fun and games. I was just your average, harmless prankster. But all that changed the day I unknowingly pranked a witch. The incident happened during a sunny afternoon in the quaint town of Rosewood. Hidden behind a jester's mask, I spotted a lady of old age in a lilac shawl, absorbed in a book at a park. I planned my next harmless prank, a classic fake snake surprise. As she shrieked in response to the rubber snake, I revealed the prank and my camera crew. I laughed, she didn't. Her eyes were a pool of molten lava that bore into mine. "This won't be forgotten," she warned, her voice raspy like dry leaves. At home, I reviewed the footage. The subscriber count soared, and comments flooded in, but one comment, from user Morgana Hex, chilled my blood. It read, "Beware, the real pranks begin at the stroke of midnight." I laughed it off. Little did I know, it was a warning. As the clock struck 12, my small apartment filled with an eerie chill. The lights flickered, then, a knock echoed from the closet. I froze, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. Slowly, I approached, flinging the door open only to reveal nothing. A prank? Impossible. My channel was a secret, my address, unlisted. The next day was worse. My morning coffee turned to tar in my mouth. The chair I was about to sit on crumbled into a heap of sawdust. My phone screamed ear-piercing shrieks whenever I tried to dial a number. Days turned into nights, and the pranks grew increasingly terrifying. My apartment walls bled crimson, the fridge froze everything to shattering crystals, my bed turned into a swamp when I tried to sleep. I had to stop this. But how do you find an anonymous witch? Then it hit me. The park, the book she was reading. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. I found her in the same spot, her nose buried in a book. "Please," I pleaded, "make it stop." Her lips curled into a smirk. "You find it funny when others squirm in fear, yes?" she asked, her voice unnerving me. "Give me one reason why I should." I hesitated, then replied, "Because I've learned my lesson." She studied me for a while, then finally said, "Very well. But remember, young prankster, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, always." As abruptly as they began, the pranks ceased. I was relieved, but also transformed. No longer was I the carefree prankster who found joy in others' fright. I became more sensitive, considerate, and focused my channel on harmless, fun pranks. From time to time, I still see her in the park, a silent reminder of my unforgettable encounter. I'd never have thought the harmless fun of Prankster's Paradise could turn into my paranormal prankster horror, but it was a lesson learned the hard way. A lesson I'll never forget. Challenge of the Damned. Every thrill seeker finds a thrill, even if it's not the one they seek. I'm a YouTuber, specializing in the exploration of the uncanny, the forgotten. When I stumbled upon an antique book, Rites of the Unseen, documenting a series of ancient rituals, I felt an irresistible pull. This was my holy grail. My next big hit. The first few rituals were benign, designed to ward off evil or bring fortune. I filmed myself, chanting incantations and arranging symbols with an excitement that permeated my channel. Then, I reached the page titled, Challenge of the Damned. My heart pounded as I read the cryptic warning, "Those who brave this challenge invoke the dwellers of the Shadow Realm." My subscriber count soared. People were hooked, speculating what would happen next. They didn't realize how deeply I was sinking into the morass. I couldn't stop. I had to perform the ritual. I was drawn to it, as a moth to a flame. The ritual required a relic, an object once owned by a deceased individual, and the night of the new moon. I obtained a worn-out locket from a local pawn shop, claimed to belong to a woman who perished mysteriously in the 1800s. I prepared meticulously, painting archaic symbols in my living room, arranging candles around the room, and placing the locket in the middle. The new moon came. I turned on the camera. With trembling hands, I began the incantation. The air grew cold, heavy. The candles flickered, casting strange, dancing shadows on the wall. As I uttered the final word, the room plunged into darkness. I could see nothing, hear nothing, save my own rapid breathing. Suddenly, the room illuminated. I looked down at the locket, aglow with an eerie, green light. A low growl echoed, resonating from everywhere and nowhere. It was guttural, monstrous, a sound that no human could make. I jumped up, terror flooding through me. I had intended to run, to escape. But I found myself frozen. I saw it. A shadowy form, taller than any man, twisted and grotesque. Its eyes, like burning coals, stared directly at me. It moved closer. A smell, decay, and despair washed over me. I could hear a low whisper in my head, a dark seduction that entwined itself around my consciousness. We have been summoned. We have been forgotten. Now, we have returned. I screamed, terror ripping through me. I ran. But no matter where I went, it was there, haunting my peripherals, its whisper echoing in my mind. The next days were a blur. I was barely eating, hardly sleeping. I could see the creature in every shadow, hear its whisper in the silence of the night. My life, my sanity, seemed to be spiraling out of control. Desperate, I decided to perform a counter-ritual, hoping to reverse the nightmare I'd brought onto myself. I rummaged through rites of the unseen, finding a ritual labeled Sanctum of Light. It promised deliverance from the shadow realm. The ritual required a personal belonging. I chose my father's watch, hoping that his memory could provide some strength. I recited the incantation, the room awash with the soft glow of a dozen candles. As I completed the chant, a brilliant light burst from the watch, illuminating the room. But then, the shadow creature emerged, a stark contrast in the radiant light. I could hear it laughing, a bone-chilling, metallic sound. "You are ours now. The light cannot save you." Despair crashed down on me. I had failed. I had gambled with the unknown, and lost. There was no going back. Then, I felt it. A warmth spreading through me. A glimmer of hope. The memory of my father, his resilience, his courage, surged in me. I clutched the glowing watch, shouting at the creature, "I reject you. You have no power over me." The creature roared, a horrifying, deafening sound. The room shook. And then, there was silence. The creature was gone. The aftermath was surreal. The dread had lifted. I was alone in the eerie silence of my living room, the camera still rolling. I stared at it, realizing the gravity of my misadventure. The video I uploaded next wasn't like any of the others. It was a warning, a confession of my hubris. The views and comments soared, but I didn't care anymore. I had glimpsed the abyss, danced with shadows, and barely escaped. Sometimes, we chase the thrill, the unknown, with an indomitable spirit of curiosity. But there are forgotten paths, unseen doors that are locked for a reason. As for me, I had learned my lesson. I had faced the challenge of the damned and survived, barely. I would never be the same, and in the realm of the unknown, some things are better left unseen. Rebirth. When the line between sanity and madness blurs, reality becomes an opaque sphere that distorts every echo of the past. The echoes that still resound in our old mansion are of my mother's laughter, her lilting lullabies, and my father's endless devotion to her. Now, only half of those echoes remain. Only father's crazed obsession resonates within the stark walls of our home, echoing in the hidden depths of his locked lab. Since mother's death, father's eccentricities transformed into a monstrous madness. A once acclaimed geneticist, Leonard, he now spent endless nights hidden behind his lab's reinforced steel door. As the days turned into weeks, my curiosity began to morph into fear. And that fear finally pushed me to uncover the truth. It was a cold, midnight hour when I decided to venture into the forbidden world of his lab. My palms were clammy as I entered the secret codes I had meticulously observed him entering. The heavy metallic door slid open, unveiling a chilling sight. Rows and rows of cold chambers filled with pale, amorphous forms, submerged in a fluorescent green liquid. The forms were grotesque parodies of human beings, malformed limbs, deformed torsos, faces twisted in perpetual horror. My gut churned, but I moved on, driven by a twisted desire to know what had happened to my father. As I walked deeper into the lab, I discovered a room with a single cold chamber. In it floated a figure, seemingly perfect in every aspect. A chill ran down my spine as I realized who the figure resembled: my mother. Leonard had used Mother's remaining genetic material to recreate her. My heart pounded in my chest as I took in the sight. This thing was an abomination, a twisted caricature of the woman I remembered. Yet, it bore a striking resemblance to her. The same copper hair floating around a serene face, the same slender form. I reached out, my fingers brushing the cold glass of the chamber, as hot tears blurred my vision. I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I spun around. Father stood there, his eyes haunted and manic. "Annalise," he rasped, "you weren't supposed to see this." I recoiled from him, tears streaming down my face. "This is wrong, Father. This isn't Mother." His eyes were wild as he pleaded, "I can fix her, Annalise. I can bring her back. I just need more time." "No, Father!" I screamed, my voice echoing around the sterile room. "She's gone. And this isn't her." He shook his head, a sob wrenching from his throat. "But don't you see, Annalise? It's all we have left of her. Her DNA, her essence. I can fix the errors. I can bring her back. I can." As I watched my father's desperate breakdown, a horrifying realization hit me. I understood his obsession, his madness. A part of me, the part that still yearned for my mother's warm embrace, sympathized with him. It scared me to my core. Was I too being pulled into this abyss of desperation and insanity? In the end, I made a choice. I chose sanity over desperation, reality over illusion. I destroyed the lab, the abominable creatures, the grotesque version of my mother. I watched as Father crumbled, his obsession reduced to ashes. My heart ached as I saw the spark of madness fade from his eyes, replaced with a dull emptiness. He didn't resist as they took him away, his gaze lost, his spirit broken. The echoes of the past finally faded, leaving behind an oppressive silence. I had stopped my father's monstrous project, but at the cost of his sanity, and perhaps a part of my own. Our house, now silent, was no longer a place of laughter and love. It was a monument to a family destroyed by loss and obsession. As I wandered through the echoing emptiness, I couldn't help but wonder, was the horror of rebirth greater than the agony of loss? Or was it the horrifying revelation that the line between sanity and madness was but a blurry divide, a line that could be crossed by anyone drowning in despair?
The Collector. I've always prided myself on being an artist. Over the years, I've worked on all sorts of creatures, from foxes to eagles, lions to reptiles. My art, you see, is to capture life in death, preserving their grace and majesty for an eternity. But nothing prepared me for the day I became the Collector. It started innocently enough, with a mysterious package left at the doorstep of my shop. I opened the box, my curiosity piqued, and what lay inside sent a shiver down my spine. A human corpse, perfectly preserved and as fresh as morning dew. Beneath the body, an anonymous note, "Preserve it." I was appalled, horrified even, but as I looked closer at the body, I realized it was too late for police, for questions. The individual was beyond saving, yet so perfectly preserved. The artist in me, always yearning for a new challenge, won out over the moralist. I began my work, treating the body with the same reverence as any creature I'd worked on. The final result was eerie in its lifelike quality, a tribute to the taxidermist's skill. The lifeless man now seemed simply to be at rest, his expression calm, almost peaceful. Days passed, and I began to receive more packages, each with a fresh human corpse and a similar note. No names, no requests, just an order: preserve it. I knew I was descending into a madness that mixed art with an unspeakable horror, but I was drawn in, unable to resist the peculiar nature of this grim work. The bodies began to pile up in my shop, each more lifelike than the last. I was aghast, yet couldn't help but admire the unnerving beauty of my creations. People were drawn to my shop, the lifelike bodies behind the glass drawing them in. Morbid curiosity, maybe, but business was thriving. One evening, as I was about to lock up, a new package arrived, larger than any before. I dragged it into my shop with a sense of dread. I cut the tape and the folds of the box peeled away to reveal a mirror, a large antique piece with an ornate golden frame. No corpse this time, just a note, for the collector. Confused, I propped the mirror against a wall, its reflective surface facing the taxidermied humans. An odd request, but by now, I had grown numb to the weirdness of my situation. I locked the shop and went home, deciding to deal with it in the morning. That night, I was plagued by nightmares. Images of my human collection twisted into grotesque parodies of themselves. Their faces contorted with pain, their hands reaching out for me, begging for release. I woke up in a cold sweat, the early morning light seeping through the curtains. I rushed to the shop, my mind a whirlwind of panic and confusion. I fumbled with the keys, the image of my monstrous creation seared into my mind. The door creaked open and I braced myself, but the shop was as I left it. The taxidermied humans stood eerily still, their expressions unchanged. I sighed with relief. Until I saw the mirror. Reflected in the antique glass, my creations were alive. Their eyes followed me, their lips moved in silent pleas, their hands reaching out for me from within the mirror. I screamed, backing away. But my reflection wasn't my own. Instead, staring back at me was a new corpse, pale and lifeless, my own face twisted into a grimace of fear. Then the understanding hit me like a freight train. I was the next piece of the collection. The note echoed in my mind, for the collector. Paralyzed by fear, I watched as my own lifeless image stepped out of the mirror, approaching me with a dreadful slowness. My hands were shaking, my mind screaming for me to run, but my body wouldn't obey. The thing that was once me reached out, its touch icy and solid. A gasp escaped my lips as a chill spread through my body. My eyes fell on the mirror, and I saw my own terrified reflection becoming still, lifeless, preserved. I am the collector, forever trapped in a moment of frozen terror, a part of my own grotesque collection. And I can only watch, my silent pleas unheard, as the packages continue to arrive. The door in the cellar.
It all started on a grey Tuesday morning. As a freelance writer, I often found myself roaming around my house, chasing the elusive muse. This time, my journey led me to the basement. That's when I saw it, an archaic wooden door tucked in a corner I never cared to explore. It was a startling discovery. How could a door just appear out of nowhere? Compelled by curiosity, I turned the rusted knob and pushed, revealing a seemingly endless stone staircase winding downwards. A cool draft whispered past me, carrying with it an uncanny stillness. Swallowing my unease, I began my descent. At the end of the staircase, I found myself standing before an eerily familiar landscape, my house, only not as I knew it. It stood, a dark mirrored image, under a stormy sky illuminated by hauntingly bright moonlight. The surreal sight before me gave way to panic, but curiosity once again held me captive. I approached the house, each step a second guessing myself. As I reached the front door, it creaked open before my trembling hand could touch the knob. Stepping in, the familiar aroma of jasmine, my wife, Lisa's favorite scent, filled the air. Yet, something was wrong. It was laced with a metallic tinge, making my stomach churn. From the living room, I heard the soft, sweet laughter of my children, but it echoed, somehow distorted. Turning the corner, my heart plummeted. Sitting on the floor were my children, only they were no longer the innocent beings I kissed goodnight. Their eyes glowed like molten gold, teeth elongated into vicious fangs. Yet, their laughter was the same, just as my daughter's doll, half-ripped, and I hanging loose, was still her favorite toy. I stumbled back in terror, rushing to find Lisa. I hoped she would be my anchor in this insanity. But when I found her in our bedroom, she was hunched over, her back turned to me. She was whispering something, a lullaby she used to sing to the kids, her voice as enchanting as ever, but also ravenous. "Lisa?" I said. She turned. What I saw wasn't the woman I had married. Her skin was a sickly pale, veins prominent, eyes blood red. Yet, her lips curved into the loving smile I knew all too well, and she held out her arms as if to hug me. "Welcome home, dear," she said, her voice now a horrifying growl. I ran, not looking back, leaving behind the monstrous perversion of my family. I flew down the stairs, towards the mysterious door. Bursting through, I found myself in my basement, back in my own reality. I slammed the door shut, my heart pounding, sweat pouring down my face. With the return of normalcy, doubt crept in. Was it all a hallucination? A dream, perhaps? I cautiously approached the door again, and upon touching it, I felt the sinister chill. It was real, terrifyingly so. The door in the cellar became my unspoken dread. Yet, it was a connection to my loved ones, albeit twisted versions of them. They were in there, somewhere, I could feel it. I've tried to ignore the door, to bury its existence in the deepest parts of my mind. But each night, I hear it. The distorted laughter of my children, the grotesque lullaby of my wife, whispering through the cracks of the door. There's a door in my cellar, a portal to a nightmarish reality. And it haunts me, a chilling reminder of the family I've lost, replaced by something monstrous. I am drawn to it, repelled by it, bound to it. It is my terror, my obsession, my curse, the door in the cellar.
Thank you for watching, and remember, the darkness awaits. Until our paths cross again, stay fearful and stay subscribed.